I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Thursday, January the 4th. And these auction managers are calling out snow on their backs. That's always a good selling point for feeder cattle, especially big calves, and they've been weaned for a long time. But when those cattle have been through some storms like they've been through all through most all the country here over the past 2 or 3 weeks, and they've had snow on their backs and made it through a hard storm and some cold weather, it almost makes those cattle foolproof. And some of your feeders, some of your farmer feeders are still filling some pen space there. That's the cattle they want. There's been a lot of trouble getting cattle straightened up this year, and they don't want any more of that. And then those cattle that's had snow on their backs or long time weaned, they'll usually just go right on, and the stress from being bought and then hauled wherever they need to go doesn't bother them a whole lot. You talk about dry weather down in the southern plains, I tell you what, you know, any snow that might have fell through the southern plains and the hard red winter wheat region, you could pretty much blow off the road just by taking a big breath, and just had no moisture to it. There's been no moisture to speak of since way back in August, and this dry land wheat has played out already. And normally you just see some spring calves that are yet to be sold by some diversified farmers that have a cow herd too, that usually hold them back till after harvest and then wean them, and so they don't sell them until after the first of the year. But we're getting ready to see some displaced cattle off this dry wheat pasture, because that wheat is too expensive to just be a place to haul hay to, and there's nothing out there for them to eat. I've had no moisture. The bitter cold that we've had in the southern plains the last 2 or 3 weeks has really just made that wheat crawl back in the ground, and it's really getting to be a bad situation. And normally, even on a dry year, you don't have to pull them off quite this quick. But also your irrigated wheat, which you're lucky if you've got a renter that or a farmer that's renting to you, that will turn the pivots on once in a while and give you a little bit of wheat. But even the irrigated wheat that they will water, or if a guy owns his own wheat, we hadn't been able to water it because the last 2 or 3 weeks it's just been too cold. You can't take a chance on trying to water that. It's expecting to warm up this weekend and most of next week, so the irrigated wheat will get a drink that way. But there's going to be some cattle moving off that. But there again, those guys that backgrounded those cattle on wheat had so much trouble getting those cattle straightened up, they're likely just to hang on to them and put them in a growing yard or something like that. And I don't expect that your sale barns are just going to be flooded with them. Of course, I'll see some increase in receipts, but a lot of guys will just move them somewhere else with cheap feed, and the market's looking good. But you look at the board on Wednesday, February live cattle was down 40 cents after the big up on Tuesday. End of the day on Wednesday at 122.95, and we are expecting the funds to kind of roll out of that February live cattle here fairly soon, and you don't want to get caught up in that if you don't have to, but they'll be rolling over into farther out months. But your feeder cattle for March down a nickel after being up big time on Tuesday, but ending the day on Wednesday at 146.82. Look at your spot January feeder cattle contracts down 15 cents at 149.37, and a long ways from what your cash feeder index levels are sitting at. But fat cattle trade, of course, we haven't had any really to speak of this early in the week. The fed cattle exchange is just really not doing anything. 388 head on offer and no sales at all. Did have a few sales on a direct basis on Tuesday at 122.50 FOB in Nebraska. A lot of the Tuesday traders there in Nebraska, if you remember them or know which ones they are. And in Iowa, they did have some live trade at 123 delivered. You don't see that a whole lot. Most of your live sales are usually FOB, free on board there at the feed yard. But sometimes those farmer feeders will deliver them. They got their own trucks and they can work out a deal that way. But box beef cutout value soared on Wednesday there, just up big and really pulled along by trimmings, if you can believe it. Trimmings were sharply higher, but we kind of underestimated these end users needing to fill up their shelf space after the long holiday break there, but they got back in and really started competing and needing to make some more orders, and of course your packers in turn cranked the prices up. But choice cutouts 208.62 in the afternoon on Wednesday, up $3.48. You don't see it up that much in one day's trade very often. Selects almost at $200, 199.16 up $2.59, and they've whittled that choice select spread down to just under $9.50. But you look at your feeder cattle markets, like I said about the index levels, real-time index on Beef Market Central, the average from 7 to 900 pound steers sitting at 155.93, up $1.11 from the late in the day on Tuesday. And tell you how close it runs right with that CME index. CME index is at 155.90, but both of those are about $6 almost higher than what your spot market is on your January feeder cattle contract. And you look, it doesn't look like cash is going to weaken anytime soon on these feeder cattle. Especially with the conditions, the cold weather, and again, guys really going after them. You might want to be involved in that big run-up that January has to do sometime in the next couple of weeks, so keep that in mind. But you look at some feeder auctions on Wednesday there, OKC West and El Reno, Oklahoma. Those guys don't like the cold weather and didn't get out and get many cattle put together coming in. Like I said, a lot of them probably need to move some cattle off wheat. But just a little over 3,000 head, 3,150 there in El Reno, and that includes the calves and the yearlings. Remember, they didn't have the calf sale on Tuesday to start the year back off again. But it's been 3 weeks since they had a sale, really hard to tell. But of course, prices are higher everywhere, and guys are just really excited about getting back into the market and buying some cattle to feed. But you look at some other places there. Like I said, we've got a lot of cattle moving out of the heart of the Midwest. Your farmers that row crop and have a cow herd are moving their cattle up there. But you get up there from central Nebraska across southern Iowa, all of Missouri, and places like that. It's just really a lot of good cattle moving right now. High quality cattle, but fairly fleshy in most cases. But whenever they get some condition with that quality, they can bring out some big prices. But you look at Tom Fry and family there at Creston Livestock, Creston, Iowa. 58 head of black yearling steers there, weighed 820 pounds at 159 on Wednesday there in Creston, America. You look out at Albion, Nebraska, had a big slug of 7-weight steers there at 2:30 in the afternoon, all blacks, 142 head of steers, weighed 710 pounds, bring 172.30 in Albion. And a big quote, which I want to talk a little bit about what cattle are breaking at. Watching those sales of cattle come across your National Beef Wire today, saw a lot of 600-pound calves. I mean, top prices on a 600-pound calf around $1.80 in the Midwest. That's $1,080, and you figure you've got 800 pounds to take those cattle on feed, and you figure conservatively at 60 cents on the gain. That's going to cost you another $480, so $1,560 in a fat steer there. And you got to look out past the big drop off in April going down into June, and you see on that same steer it's going to be about $1.15, which is just a little over $1,600. So maybe 50 bucks a head if you don't stub your toe, it doesn't get super cold or muddy, everything goes right. That's kind of a big risk there, but that's on a 600-pound calf bringing $1.80. Now I'm going to tell you about Bassett, Nebraska. Had a big sale there to kick the new year off, 4,500 head. And look at this quote on Cattle Market Central at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. 95 head, a top quality 614-pound steers bring 193 1/4. That's your feeder flash for Thursday.